I always thought betrayal would arrive like a storm, loud, undeniable. But when my wife Eliza slipped my name in bed with her lover, it was quieter than a whisper. She thought she'd never get caught. She was wrong, because the night I exposed her affair in front of everyone she respected, she finally learned you can't build your life on lies forever. I used to believe that if my marriage ever fell apart, it would be obvious, shouting matches, slammed doors, confessions spat in anger. But the truth was quieter. It was a slow drift, like the tide pulling the sand from under my feet before I realized I was sinking. My name is Daniel Pierce. I'm 38, and for almost a decade, I believed Eliza was my partner in everything. We met in graduate school in Seattle. She was sharp, warm in a way that drew people to her. Over the years, we built a life that, from the outside, looked solid. We shared routines, inside jokes, the sense that no matter what, we'd face it together. But lately, small things began to gnaw at me. They were so subtle I almost convinced myself I was imagining them. A flicker of irritation when I spoke. The way she'd check her phone the instant it buzzed, even in the middle of a sentence. A laugh that sounded practiced, as though she was performing a role she didn't believe in anymore. One night, she was sitting across from me at our kitchen table, scrolling through her phone while I talked about the idea of taking a weekend trip to the coast. Somewhere quiet, just the two of us. She nodded without looking up, murmured, "That's nice, Michael." The moment she said it, my skin prickled. Michael. I waited for her to catch her mistake. She didn't. Her thumb kept moving across the screen, her expression unchanged. It was as though I'd vanished. I didn't correct her. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she'd mixed up names from work. But as I cleared our plates, something settled heavy in my chest. She hadn't slipped up because she was distracted. She slipped because she was comfortable enough to let the truth show for a second. That night, I lay awake listening to her breathing. I remembered how, years earlier, she'd once said she could never stand dishonesty. She claimed that if she ever felt herself falling out of love, she'd have the decency to admit it. But here she was, lying beside me with her phone under the pillow, and I couldn't shake the certainty that she was already gone. Over the next week, I watched her closely. The patterns were clearer than I wanted to admit. Her moods rose and fell on a schedule I couldn't track. Sometimes she'd drift through the house silent and preoccupied. Other days she was almost giddy, humming as she folded laundry or made dinner she hardly touched. She'd started dressing differently on random weekdays, saying she was meeting a client or running an errand that never seemed to have any evidence behind it. I told myself that if I started snooping, I'd become the person I never wanted to be. Suspicious, bitter, paranoid. But in the end, I needed to know if the life I thought we shared was already over. One morning, while she was in the shower, I picked up her keys from the counter. My hand was steady. That surprised me most. Her SUV was parked in the driveway. I opened the glove compartment, checking for receipts or notes. Nothing, of course. Eliza wasn't sloppy, but I wasn't relying on her to slip up in the obvious ways. I still had an old dashcam from when I worked deliveries years back. It looked ordinary, just a small black lens and a cord that ran beneath the dashboard. What mattered was that it recorded video and audio and uploaded everything to a cloud account she didn't know existed. Took me 5 minutes to install it. When she came downstairs, wrapped in a towel, I offered to warm up the car since there was frost on the windshield. She smiled vaguely and thanked me. I spent the next days trying to act normal. We talked about grocery lists, our friend's baby shower, whether we should replace the old grill. But underneath the small talk, I was waiting. On Thursday morning, she told me she'd be late. Some client meeting in Bellevue that might run into the evening. She said it casually, kissing my cheek with a practiced sweetness that didn't touch her eyes. That night, when she came home, she moved around the kitchen like nothing had changed. I watched her pour a glass of wine, answer a text, pretend not to see me studying her. She went to bed early. As soon as I heard the soft rhythm of her breathing, I turned on my laptop and logged into the dashcam feed. The files were all there, time-stamped and neatly arranged. My heart didn't race as I clicked the video marked 5:12 p.m. the time she was supposed to be meeting her client. The footage came alive on my screen. The camera pointed through the windshield, catching the drizzle on the glass, the glow of the dashboard. Her voice filled my headphones, clear and bright. "Did you miss me today?" A man's voice answered, smooth, confident. "Every minute. But you already know that." She laughed. A real laugh, not the hollow echo she saved for me. They talked for a while. About a bar in Belltown, about how Michael wanted to see her again soon, but it was getting risky. I closed my eyes and let their voices roll over me. All the excuses I'd made for her drifted away. There was no ambiguity left, no chance I was imagining things. I watched until the video ended, then sat there in the dark, the laptop screen still glowing. The certainty didn't feel like relief. It felt like an anchor dropping straight through my chest. But at least now I knew. The life I'd been clinging to was already gone, and I was done pretending otherwise. The next morning, Eliza acted like everything was fine. She sipped her coffee, asked if I could pick up paper towels after work. I nodded, pretending I was listening, but I was already planning what came next. I knew confronting her outright would only end in denials or tears meant to buy time. She was too skilled at managing appearances. If I accused her with nothing to show, she'd find a way to flip the narrative. She'd call me paranoid, claim I was imagining things because I was insecure. I'd seen her do it to other people, twisting the truth so tightly they started to doubt their own memories. So I decided not to accuse her at all. Instead, I studied the recordings every night after she fell asleep. I learned the pattern of her calls. She and Ryan rarely spoke during the day, but once the sun set, they became careless. He'd call her as he left work, his voice low and easy, telling her how he couldn't stop thinking about her. She would giggle like a teenager. She always made sure to tell him when she was home that she was safe. Sometimes she'd whisper she wished she was with him instead. Those conversations left no space for excuses. This wasn't a fling she regretted. This was something she nurtured and protected. By the end of the week, I knew more about their relationship than I ever wanted to. Where they liked to meet, how often they saw each other, which bars they chose so no one they knew would spot them. One night, around 11, she stepped onto the patio to take another call. She thought I'd gone to bed. Through the glass door, I watched her pace back and forth, smiling as she listened to whatever he was saying. Her face looked lighter than it had in months. When she came back inside, she didn't see me standing in the hallway. She put her phone in her pocket and took a deep breath, as if she had to switch back to the part she played at home. I turned away before she noticed me. I wasn't interested in catching her in some dramatic scene. I didn't need to watch them together in person. What I wanted was the evidence organized, undeniable, ready to show anyone who thought I was making it up. So I clipped the most telling parts of the recordings. The affectionate exchanges. The plans for the next meetup. The way she said his name. Michael, soft, affectionate, with none of the impatience she used on me. I backed everything up to multiple drives and a secure cloud folder. Once I had the archive finished, I sat back and felt something close to calm. I'd spent weeks feeling like I was losing my mind. Now I had proof. The reality was ugly, but it was clear. A few days later, Eliza brought up a dinner party Matt and Jenna were hosting. We'd known them for years, vacations, birthdays, all the milestones that make people feel like family. "We should go," she said. "We've been keeping to ourselves too much lately." The way she said it almost made me laugh. As if the only problem was our social life. As if her affair wasn't the reason we'd been drifting further apart. "Sure," I told her. "It'll be good to see everyone." That evening, I sent Jenna a text. I asked what time to come by and if I could bring anything. My message was calm, polite, so no one would guess what I had planned. Eliza spent Saturday afternoon getting ready, humming to herself while she packed a small gift for the hosts. She didn't notice I was watching her more closely than usual. She didn't sense that every moment she pretended we were fine only confirmed how far she'd gone. I didn't bother pretending to be excited. I just waited. The drive to Matt and Jenna's place was quiet. She scrolled through her phone most of the way, smiling at messages I didn't ask about. I didn't need to. I already knew who she was texting. When we pulled up, She slipped her phone into her bag and finally looked at me. "Try to have fun tonight," she said, almost as if she was giving me permission. I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself to speak without revealing everything. Inside, the house was already busy with guests. Eliza walked ahead of me, greeting people like nothing was wrong. Watching her was like watching someone audition for a role. Her smile was quick, practiced, never quite reaching her eyes. I followed, shaking hands, accepting a drink I didn't plan to finish. I scanned the room, and it didn't take long to spot him. Ryan. He stood near the kitchen island, telling some story that made a few people laugh a little too loudly. He looked like any other confident man enjoying himself, but I knew better. I knew how his voice sounded when he thought no one else could hear. For a moment, he didn't notice me. He kept talking to Eliza's friend Melanie, one hand resting on the counter. But when Eliza joined the group, he straightened a little. She gave him a look, a small, unguarded flash of something intimate. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. I stayed back, watching how easily she fell into conversation with him, how she positioned herself just close enough that no one else would think it unusual. At dinner, she made a point of saving me a seat across the table from the two of them. "That way we can all catch up," she said lightly. I sat down without comment. If she thought she was controlling the narrative, she was wrong. The conversation started harmless enough, stories about vacations, work complaints, the usual. But eventually, Matt turned to Ryan with a grin. "So, you seeing anyone these days?" Ryan paused. His eyes flicked to Eliza, then back to Matt. "I've learned to appreciate what isn't mine," he said. The words hung in the air longer than they should have. A couple of people laughed, uncertain. Eliza looked down, twisting her napkin. That was the moment I knew I'd waited long enough. The performance was almost over. When Ryan made his smug remark about what isn't mine, I didn't react right away. I watched Eliza, saw her eyes dart toward me, searching for any sign I'd understood what he meant. She looked away just as quickly, but her hand trembled on the table. A hush settled over the group. Matt shifted in his chair, uncertain whether to laugh it off. Jenna's smile faded. Even the background chatter from the kitchen softened, as if the room itself sensed something had changed. Ryan raised his glass in a small, mocking salute. His gaze met mine, and in that instant he thought he'd won. That he could humiliate me in front of people I'd known for years and walk away untouched. I set my fork down. My hands were steady. "Enjoy her," I said, my voice low but clear. Eliza's head snapped up. For the first time all night, her composure cracked. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Nobody spoke. The silence was worse than shouting. Ryan shifted in his seat, realizing too late he'd overplayed his confidence. Eliza reached for her wine glass, her fingers knocking it against the plate. A dull clink that made her flinch. Jenna was the first to break the stillness. "What's going on?" she asked quietly, looking from me to Eliza. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the flash drive. I placed it on the table beside my plate. "What is that?" Matt asked, his voice cautious. I stood and walked over to the sideboard where Jenna kept a small media console. I didn't rush. I wanted every person there to understand that this wasn't impulsive, that I'd come prepared. Eliza's voice rose, sharp with panic. "Daniel, don't do this." I ignored her. I plugged the drive into the USB port. The television screen flickered, illuminating the long dining table in pale blue light. Matt tried to defuse the tension. "Hey, maybe we should." The first recording started to play. The video wasn't dramatic. Just a view from the dashboard of Eliza's SUV. The wipers moved across the windshield in a steady rhythm. Then came her voice. Clear. Happy. "Did you miss me today?" Ryan's reply followed. "Every minute. But you already know that." A ripple of shock moved around the table. No one spoke. Eliza's breathing quickened. She stood up, but Jenna stepped in front of the television remote. Eliza's hand froze in midair, her face drawn tight. The next clip began without pause. Another evening. Another car ride. "I wish we didn't have to hide," she said. Ryan laughed. We're smarter than they are. Jenna's mouth fell open. Melanie covered her face with her hand. Ryan's chair scraped as he stood abruptly. Turn that off. I didn't move. The screen kept playing. Eliza reached across the table, desperate to unplug the device, but Matt stepped in her path. His voice was calm but final. Sit down. For a moment, she looked at him like she might argue. But then she saw everyone else watching her. No sympathy in their eyes, and she sank back into her chair. Ryan tried again. Daniel, you've made your point. I turned to face him. I'm not finished. One final clip rolled. The one that mattered most. Ryan's voice. You know he'll never suspect anything. He's too weak. Eliza. I know. That's why I love you. A ragged breath came from the far end of the table. Everyone turned. Ryan's wife stood in the doorway, her hands clenched at her sides. She'd arrived minutes earlier with Jenna's sister. Too late to hear the beginning but perfectly on time for the truth. Her voice was calm, almost detached. That's my husband. Eliza went pale. Ryan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Without another word, Ryan's wife walked around the table and slapped Eliza across the face. The sound was sharp and final. Eliza staggered back, one hand to her cheek. Nobody moved to help her. Ryan's wife looked at him once, just long enough to let him see what he'd lost, then turned and walked straight out the front door. Ryan hesitated, torn between chasing her or staying to defend himself. Then he bolted after her, nearly tripping over a chair. I reached for the remote, turned off the screen, and faced my wife. Eliza looked at me with her mouth half open, as if she still thought there was some explanation that might fix it all. But she didn't speak. Nobody at the table did. Jenna's voice broke the quiet. Eliza, is this real? Eliza didn't answer. She looked around the room, her eyes flicking from face to face, searching for someone who might rescue her. But there was no sympathy left. Her father's voice came from the doorway. I warned you. Eliza gasped. She hadn't seen her parents arrive. They must have come in during the recording. Her mother stepped beside him. You embarrassed us. You destroyed your marriage. Eliza tried to steady her breathing. Please don't. Her father raised a hand. We're done. They turned and walked out together. I picked up the envelope I'd brought. Divorce papers already signed and filed. I set them next to Eliza's untouched glass. She reached for my arm. Daniel, wait. I stepped back. You did this, I said. Then I left. I walked out of that house without looking back. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. I didn't feel much of anything. As I stepped onto the front porch, I saw Ryan standing in the driveway, trying to explain himself to his wife. She had her car door open, her hand resting on the roof like she was deciding whether to slam it shut or throw it at him. He gestured wildly, his voice pitching higher as he tried to make her listen. She didn't. She got in, shut the door, and drove away without a word. Ryan turned as if he'd just noticed me watching. His mouth opened, but I didn't wait to hear what he thought he needed to say. I walked right past him as if he were no one. Behind me, the house stayed silent. No footsteps followed. No shouts. Just the hush that comes when there's nothing left to deny. I drove home alone. The roads were mostly empty. The city quiet in a way I'd never appreciated before. When I pulled into our driveway, my driveway, I sat in the car for a long time. I thought I'd feel some triumph, maybe even satisfaction. But all I felt was the finality. The last remnants of the life I'd built with Eliza were gone. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. Jenna had called twice. Melanie sent a long text that started with I don't know what to say and ended with I'm so sorry. Even Craig, who usually avoided drama, left me a voicemail. I didn't answer any of them. By noon, Jenna called again. This time I picked up. You okay? She asked. I'm fine, I said. And it was mostly true. You were so calm last night, she said. Like you knew exactly how it would end. I did, I told her. I was just waiting for the right moment. She was quiet for a while. Her parents called me this morning, she finally said. "They're not speaking to her. Her dad said he's done." I didn't respond. There was nothing to add. By the afternoon, I started packing my things. I'd already arranged for a short-term rental. A small apartment on the other side of the city. It wasn't permanent, but it was mine. No memories attached. No obligations to pretend. Around 3, there was a knock at the door. For a moment, I thought it was Jenna or Craig checking in. But when I opened it, Eliza stood on the porch. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Like the energy she'd spent holding her life together had finally drained out. She didn't speak right away. She kept her arms folded tightly across her chest, her eyes on the ground. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. Not because I owed her anything, but because I needed to see what she thought she could salvage. She walked into the living room and stopped, taking in the boxes stacked along the walls, the half-empty bookshelves, the suitcase by the door. "I never meant for it to get this far," she said. Her voice was quiet, strained. "It didn't just get this far," I replied. "You took it here." She swallowed hard. "I was unhappy. I didn't know how to tell you." "So you told someone else instead," I said. She looked up, her eyes rimmed with tears. "I was angry at you, at everything. You stopped caring about me." "No," I said. "I stopped chasing after a version of you that didn't exist anymore." She shook her head, her lip trembling. "I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," I said, over and over. For a few seconds, she didn't move. Then she walked to the table where I'd left the divorce papers. She picked them up, flipping through the pages like she might find some clause that would change everything. "You really filed them," she whispered. "I did," I said. Tears started falling. She didn't bother wiping them away. "Everyone's turned on me," she said. "My parents won't take my calls. Ryan's wife has told everyone what happened. Even Melanie won't answer." "They saw you," I said simply. "They saw who you are." She set the papers down and pressed her hand against her mouth, trying to steady herself. "I don't know what to do," she said. "That's not my problem anymore," I told her. Her shoulders shook. "Please, Daniel, just 5 minutes to explain." "I've heard enough," I said. She looked at me like she still hoped I'd soften, like if she said the right thing, I'd forget everything. "Can I come back?" she finally asked. I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're asking me that after all this?" She nodded. "I don't have anywhere else." "You had everywhere," I said, "and you threw it away." I walked to the door and opened it. She didn't move at first. She stood there, staring at the floor. Then she picked up her purse, turned, and stepped past me. Just before she crossed the threshold, she stopped. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I looked her in the eye. "No," I said, "but I don't care enough to anymore." That hit her harder than any accusation. She walked down the porch steps without looking back. I closed the door behind her. That evening, I sat alone in the living room. The quiet wasn't oppressive anymore. Felt clean, like space I could finally breathe in. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Eliza. "Can we talk?" I turned the screen face down and let it ring out, because there was nothing left to say. 3 months passed. It surprised me how quickly a life could be dismantled and replaced with something simpler. The first week was the hardest. I'd wake up expecting to hear Eliza moving around the kitchen, pouring coffee, tapping out messages she'd pretend were for work. But the house stayed silent. I started to appreciate that. Silence, once a sign something was wrong, had become proof I was finally free of the performance. I moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't anything special. A 1-bedroom with old wood floors and a view of a row of trees. But it was mine. I chose every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall. No compromises, no reminders of her. People called to check on me. Jenna came by one Saturday with takeout, setting it on the kitchen counter without making a big deal of it. She didn't ask many questions. She didn't need to. She'd seen everything the night it fell apart. We ate in companionable quiet. Before she left, she hesitated by the door. "Do you feel better now that it's over?" she asked. I thought about it. It's not about feeling better, I said. It's about finally feeling honest. She nodded and let herself out. Sometimes I'd run into people we used to know. Old friends, acquaintances who'd only ever seen Eliza as charming and put together. They never asked directly, but their expressions were careful, like they were afraid to say the wrong thing. One afternoon, I saw Ryan in a grocery store parking lot. He was standing next to his car, staring at his phone. For a second, he didn't notice me walking past. When he looked up, he opened his mouth like he might speak. I didn't stop. I kept walking, and after a moment he looked away. There was no satisfaction in that encounter. He wasn't my problem anymore. He never had been. I heard bits and pieces about Eliza through mutual friends. She'd moved into a smaller place after her parents stopped paying her rent. Ryan's wife filed for divorce, and he left town soon after. Eliza tried to rebuild her life, but no one wanted to be part of it anymore. I didn't celebrate her losses, but I didn't feel sorry either. Choices have consequences, and she was finally living with hers. About 6 weeks after everything ended, I got another message from her. "I'm sorry. Please call me." I read it twice, then deleted it without answering. That evening, I made dinner for myself, a meal exactly how I liked it. No compromise, no pretending I preferred something else. After I cleaned up, I sat on the balcony and listened to the city. It struck me how peaceful life could be when you weren't trying to hold together a lie. A few days later, Jenna called again. "People are still talking about that night," she said. "Let them," I told her. "It doesn't change anything. They don't know how you stayed so calm." "I was already done grieving," I said. "I just hadn't said it out loud yet." She was quiet, then said, "I hope you find someone better." "I will," I told her. "But right now, I'm fine on my own." It was the truth. I started walking every morning before work. Just a simple loop through the neighborhood, watching the sun come up. It wasn't dramatic or exciting, but it felt like something real, something mine. The last time Eliza tried to reach me was on a rainy Tuesday. She called twice, then texted, "Do you hate me?" I didn't answer right away. I sat with the question, wondering if part of me still wanted to. But the truth was simpler. No, I didn't hate her. Hate would have meant I still cared. Instead, I felt nothing. So I left the message unread. When I thought about the night I showed everyone the recordings, I didn't feel guilt. I hadn't set out to humiliate her. I'd only decided I wouldn't protect her from her own choices. People build lives on illusions, believing that if they control the narrative long enough, it will somehow become true. But the truth always waits. Sooner or later, it shows up at your dinner party and refuses to leave. In the end, that was what mattered. Not that I'd exposed her, or that she'd lost so much in one night. What mattered was that I'd stopped lying to myself. I finally walked away, and I wasn't going back.